Okay, we should start our session. No more time to wait for her, so I hope she could connect while discussing.
Yep.
This session is about the innovation, especially led by region or with region and central government. So this kind of regional-led innovation is a big issue in Korea currently because of the unbalanced development between capital and other regions. I'm a president of Daejeon Institute of Science, Technology for Enterprise and People, DISTEP. DISTEP was established last year, May last year, for the designing such kind of regional-led innovation and development based on the science, technology, and innovation. DISTEP is located in the Daejeon. Daejeon is located in the middle of South Korea. As you may know, the science, technology, and innovation complex, the biggest complex, is in Daejeon. So Daejeon is toward for the science and technological innovation city in Korea. So hopefully working with the ASIP continuously. And so this session invite 3 foreign experts and 3 Korean experts. So may I introduce first participants? First of all, Professor Venni Krishna. Are you in Australia now?
Yeah.
In your office?
No, I'm sitting at my home now because the university is closed and it will open in another 3 days.
Right.
Because of the pandemic, you know.
Okay, just introduce yourself or your trend, interesting points. Just 1 or 2 minutes before talking.
Okay. You want me to start my talk or just introduce myself?
Yeah, just introduce yourself or current situation, any news.
Okay. My name is Venni Krishna. Actually, I was heading the Center for Science, Technology and Innovation Policy Center at the Jawaharlal Nehru University for more than 20 years. And about 3 or 4 years back, I have shifted to University of New South Wales and I've decided to shift to Sydney precisely because my 2 children are settled here and I got this opportunity as a professorial fellow at the University of New South Wales. And it's more of a research position and I do part-time teaching at the business school at the University of New South Wales. And I'm also editor-in-chief of the Science, Technology and Society, which is an international journal produced by Sage Publications. SCSCI impact factor is currently about 1.173. So a lot of my time goes into looking into the journal, and basically I'm last 3 or 4 years I'm working on higher education, research and innovation in Asia Pacific region. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. It's a good career and experiencing intellectual networking. So thank you very much. And next, Professor Angelina.
Hi, can you hear me?
Could you introduce yourself very briefly?
Yes, I'm actually with the Asia Pacific University of Technology and Innovation. I'm the director of the Research and Enterprise. So I look after the incubation center, entrepreneurship activities, ecosystem in the university, research commercialization, and also boosting the research agenda for the university. So I was involved in the writing of the various policy for government of Malaysia, including the part of the 11, 12 Malaysia plan, the strategies, for the research commercialization, and also for the higher education. And my last policy that is actually published last year with the Ministry of Higher Education is on the private higher education as an industry. And I also sit as an advisory in the board of the incubation center for University of Mpumalanga in South Africa.
Okay, thank you very much. Good job. So your main role is to teach students or to support the companies or startups for research commercialization?
For my current role, my main role is to support the startup spin-out companies of the university of students and also the academic staff to also helps to encourage and also mentor on the research grant application and publications. So I only teach very minimum 1 to 2 subjects in the area related to accounting. I'm an accountant by training, so I have my CPA.
Okay, very, very active woman, right? Okay. Okay, next, okay, still missing Linda. So, okay, you know the Professor Seol. Could you introduce us more your recent news? So,
as you know, I retired 2 years ago, and now I am running a consulting company and monitoring the international global use of IT, BT, startup, and global startup, and have a consulting to some new companies like that. All with the startup companies and valuation of technology and technology business. Every time, same thing. Yep.
okay, Professor Seol is still very, very active. So without him, ASIP still not exist. So very, very active, like still young generation. So, okay, Professor Sang-Hyuk, we invite him. So could you introduce a little bit?
Okay, as the case of Professor Seol, I retired from my university 2 years ago, and I established a small company with some brilliant scholars in Korea, but the business is falling down brilliantly. So because of COVID and because of lack of my competence. So my life is very tranquil, and I'm happy here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Two of them were professors, but now the CEO is a small companies and startups. Very good activity in Korean society and industry with many consulting and activities. Okay, another guy is Professor Byungmin.
네. 한 이제 2년 만에 만나게 되는데 아마 우리가 마닐라에서 모고 나서 3년 만에 이제 회의하는데 굉장히 반갑고 그때 만났던 분들 여기서 만나게 됐습니다.
No, I met you 2 years ago, and this is maybe the 3rd year to meet you. My English is not good, so he speaks in Korean. Say hello to you.
So yeah, right. Professor Byungmin was a good leader of ASIP. It's a big contribution to the development of ASIP. So thank you very much for participating in this session together. Okay. Why don't you, Venni, Krishna, make your presentation first?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Let me begin by thanking the ASIP and Professor Youngjoo and Professor Seol and other colleagues there for this opportunity for me to take part in this. Actually, in my correspondence, there was I think some knowledge gap. I didn't know that what is the main focus of this session and this round table. And so it was, but once hearing your introduction, it looks like that you're focused on the regional innovation and technology. But I didn't know that actually, because my paper, which is tomorrow again, which is in a different session, you know, and I discovered that my name is here also on the round table. But it was not very clear to me what is the focus of the session. In any case, I made some points in terms of my general understanding of what is happening in terms of the whole technology and innovation within the global trends, and how these global trends are impacting the Asian region, you know. So that is going to be the focus of my talk. To begin with, that as we enter the third decade of 21st century, there are now certain global trends emerging in technology and innovation, particularly during the receding phase of this pandemic situation. Technology and innovation systems operate within national and global social, political, and economic contexts. Hence, what happens at the social political front has certain impact and influence on the trajectories and goal directions of technology and innovation systems. In fact, there seems to be a transformation taking place, the way in which technological and innovation systems operate, particularly in the last 5 years. As I told you that one of my main focus will be on the global trends and how it's impacting the innovation and technological systems in Asia. 3 important global developments have come about, which have redefined the technological and innovation systems. This impacts quite profoundly in the Asian region. Firstly, you will find that Donald Trump's policies has exacerbated the deglobalization, anti-globalization, and reasserted nationalistic trade and technological policies. We did have some reverberations around the world. The world is shifting from techno-globalist oriented economic and innovation framework premised on reducing barriers to trade, investment, and supply chain development towards what I will call a new form of techno-nationalism or techno-nationalist, which had resonating impact. This had a resonating impact in India in terms of the Narendra Modi, the new regime in India, in terms of self-reliance, make in India, manufacture in India type of policies. In China, the stated goals of Made in China 2025 include increasing the Chinese domestic content of core materials of 40% by 2020 and 70% by 2025. In fact, this policy from China was issued in May 2015, the Made in China 2025 policy, much before Trump came to power in 2017. Of course, it was not the end of globalization, but certainly the global open market system was impacted in a large measure. The current pandemic situation has further accentuated this trend of new techno-nationalism, which I call, in the production and distribution of vaccines by emerging and developed countries. There is a trend of vaccine nationalism in several countries now. My second point is secondly, the COVID-19 has impacted the world and nation states in a number of ways. It has devastated the social and economic fabric of various developing countries, pushing more than 1 billion people towards the poverty. This challenge is seeking for responses in terms of inclusive innovation and inclusive growth in many countries in Asia. In several Asian countries, the labor process and informal sectors of economy, of course, informal sector is not a problem in South Korea and some of the leading countries, but informal sector is a very big problem in many of the Asian countries, including India. is posing tremendous challenges on technology and innovation. We have already seen that how the fourth industrial revolution technologies and the automation has already impacted the labor and employment in the manufacturing sectors. This is going to be further accentuated with the COVID, has further exacerbated this problem underlying labor and employment prospects. My third point is, thirdly, the rise of China. The conflicts in the South China Sea have brought about new geopolitics into sharp focus in the last few years. The other related development has been the emerging trade war, and the contest between USA and China has now culminated in the new groupings of Quad and AUKUS. Now, these are the kind of the quadrilateral understanding, and AUKUS is a kind of a military arrangement between Australia, Britain, and United States, which is integral part of the Quad, where India, Australia, and US and Japan are involved in these two groupings. These developments have already led to Chinese Huawei 5G technologies being banned in USA, EU, India, Australia, and several other countries. We have seen that a country after country have banned Chinese Huawei 5G technologies. There is a definite trend in finding alternative supply chains to China in semiconductor chips, 5G technologies, artificial intelligence, robotics, quantum computing, and various critical technologies, including the rare earth minerals, which is going to be very, very crucial for most of the advanced technologies. There is a distinct possibility or signs of a new strategic techno-scientific consortiums involving USA, Japan, India, Australia, perhaps South Korea and Taiwan, or one or two more countries. The main purpose of these new strategic techno-scientific consortiums will be to move away towards autonomy in terms of the critical technologies, advanced technologies, and also not depend too much on China in terms of the supply chain. This is a part of the new conflict which has already come about because of the contesting positions between the US and China, and this is going to have a very serious implications in the coming decade in terms of the new technologies in the Asian region. There's going to be a new kind of a strategic techno-scientific consortiums coming up in terms of technology and innovation and the knowledge in this region. In addition to the global technology, these are the kind of the global trends I was talking about. In addition to the above global technology and innovation trends that are most likely to shape the global innovation system in the coming years, there is an important insight that has emerged after the UNESCO 2021 science report. If we consider the status of the science and technology in the Asia from the statistics that have been reported in this report, this is a very big report, very extensively done in terms of the statistics and the SMT indicators. Some important insights have emerged. One is basically referring to small developing and poor countries in Asia. I'm basically focusing on the small developing and poor countries in Asia. There are more than a dozen countries mainly in Southeast Asia and the South Asia, where 50% of the population are dependent on agriculture and primary sectors of economy. The main insight which is coming out of the kind of the UNESCO 2021 science report is that there are some bright spots. For instance, Malaysia is a very bright spot. Malaysia, which was investing 0.2 or 3% on GDP about 15 years back, it has now investing almost 1% or more than 1% of GDP into gross expenditure on research and development. Some of the countries like Thailand is now investing 0.6%. So there are some bright spots which are there, but mostly many of the small developing countries, there are agriculture-based countries where agriculture security is a very important, health security is a very important, which we have seen in the pandemic area. Biological sciences come to play a very, very dominant role in many of these small countries. Here, the main insight, and given many of these Asian countries are investing less than 0.3% of their GDP into gross expenditure on research and development, which is just not enough in terms of the whole sustenance of the new challenges into science and technology. The main insight which is coming out is that the basic research is not a luxury but essential factor in many of the science and technology innovation policies for development for many of these Asian countries which are agriculturally dependent. East Asian success stories may give some lessons of learning, but they cannot be taken as models of STIP emulation or copying for many of these Asian countries. So the whole East Asian dragons model, what Korea did, what Taiwan did, will not be relevant for many of the Asian developing countries, precisely for the reason that more than 50% of the GDP and the population are dependent on agriculture. So agriculture security becomes very important. So what means agricultural security? Actually, establishing technological capacities in agriculture means basic research. It is entomology, it is plant physiology, it is water science. So unless and until you invest in basic research, you will not have a technological capability in terms of dealing with your own agriculture research. And because it is mostly the tropical agriculture within the Asian countries, the multinational companies are not interested in investing into the tropical agriculture. So unless and until you develop your endogenous capacities in science and technology by investing at least what UNESCO has come out with 1%, which is a critical figure of the GDP into gross expenditure on research and development, there is no shortcut to development. It is not only the agriculture security which is important, it is the health security which is important. Again, here tropical diseases are there, biological sciences is again a very important factor. The other related insight is that many of these countries will not be able to build innovation system without building a respective science and technology system, national scientific communities, and improving the research intensity in the universities. So one of the other points which I'm trying to make is that research is not a luxury, and SMT system is very important. Yeah.
Okay. You said very important points so far. So you need to conclude your
I conclude here.
Ideas. Okay.
Yeah. I conclude here. Yeah.
It's finished.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
You mentioned about the very critical changing trends were important points to think about.
Yeah.
Including many kind of challenges between advanced countries or developing countries or China and USA, something like that, based on the relationship of innovation and technology. And then mentioning UNESCO report, emphasizing 1% of GDP investment in R&D or innovation is very important for many Asian countries. Okay, thank you very much for your ideas or suggestions and good points. So we could discuss more.
Yeah.
Okay, next, why don't you raise your comments, Angelina, or your presentation? Are you there?
Yep. Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me? Great. Okay. Yeah. So, all right, I may start. Yeah. So I want to share, which is good that Prof. Which Krishna actually brought about, in a very broad picture in terms of how innovation is actually important, in the regional basis. So I want to come in from another different angle slightly. So just because of my current interest that I'm actually running currently in terms of startups, ecosystem, entrepreneurship system that actually helps to actually increase the innovation and also at the same time boost the survival of the enterprises, in the regional level. So I would like to look at a couple or suggest a couple of potential recommendations that I don't know whether if Daejeon might be interested to actually to look into it as a city, as a council, for the particular area. So as you mentioned as well, Daejeon is actually the heart, to the SNT, Science and Technology City. So there's a lot of the activities which are surrounding on the on the enterprise in terms of the innovation, creativity, so that it could be actually supported, if there could be a boost, in terms of the enterprising of the activities. So there you could actually look into like what are the different roles and that the ministry or the different government agency, council, or that could actually support some of the startups, incentivize them in terms of policies, in terms of the support that actually could be providing. So with the little knowledge that I have of Daejeon, I'm sorry you have to say that. Yeah, so you could have a lot more that is actually in place. If I actually repeat in terms of or mention some that you already have, that is great, but it's just something that we could actually think upon. So I would like to look at recommendations. Do you have like ready pools of mentors, for the startups? Understanding that startups are different categories of like company, unlike the normal business companies. Startups have the disruptive technologies. They could have technologies which are very innovative. They need a different support from the different mentors who can understand their culture, their ecosystem that they need in terms of helping to find or have. Am I back? Okay, so I don't know where I stopped, so maybe I just repeat a little bit. Yeah, so I want to suggest to look into the municipal council, government agencies support in terms of policy, incentives, mentors for the startup companies. If you have the incubators in the Daejeon city, so you could look at the different types of support for the incubators, whether they are commercial business incubator, social enterprise incubators, if they are impacting on the community in Daejeon, those which needs the social agenda, and universities in Daejeon, whether if they also have the incubator that will support the student startups, so that you have a complete ecosystem in Daejeon to support the enterprise, the growth of the innovative startup, technology-led companies, and also look at having the various different other financing support, which is like the venture capitalists, angel investors that actually investing in all these new startups company. So if all this could be put into place, Daejeon City will be a wonderful, vibrant science and technology city with lots of enterprising activities and innovative and creative people who entrepreneurs look into great technologies that are disruptive to the world. And you could also look at building the next generations in a different manner. All right, so another point that I want to suggest, once you have all these different incubators which are in place, you could possibly look at building a cartel, an incubation hub cartel. So which means many incubators who could collaborate across the world with the incubators in.
There's internet connection problems.
Okay, Angelina.
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, yes.
Okay, congratulations.
I'm here. Can hear you very loud and clear.
Okay, you could finish your comments. I think please talk slowly.
Okay, sorry about that. Can you hear me now?
Okay, keep going.
Okay, so should I repeat the whole thing in summary?
Summary, please.
Okay, number one is to suggest Daejeon to actually look into a different policy, support, incentive to support the startup companies from the enterprise.
Yes.
Okay, number one. Number two is to work with the to work together with different incubators so that they could scale up. So business incubators, social enterprise incubators, and university incubators. You need to bring the whole ecosystem together because these three have different agenda and purpose and the role within the ecosystem. And when you support the startup, you could look into having a pool of mentors which are ready to help the startup understand the startup ecosystem and able to to produce and replicate entrepreneurs. So replicative entrepreneurs is important. So, and you could look into supporting startups which are technology-led, technology disruptive, innovative and creative startups. At the same time, once you have all these incubators support policy, you also need to ensure that you have good pool of venture capitalists, angel investor who will invest in all these startups as part of the ecosystem. And last but not least, consider incubation hub cartel at national and international level in collaborations with other incubation hub cartel in the other regions. That will bring you to the next level of the creating an enterprising, creative and innovative science and technology city in Daejeon. Okay, maybe that summarize.
Okay,
Right.
you know Daejeon very well. you should come to Daejeon to be a good mentor, right? With a lot of money to invest. Thank you very
I
much.
don't have a lot of money, but I will definitely be happy to support in what I can.
Okay, and also we could connect each other to collaborate the international regional based ecosystem. So
I'm creating one for ASEAN.
right, very good points. And especially you mentioned about incubate the social and ecosystem or enterprise consortium between the startups and the social enterprise or student startups, something like that. Is it the different sectors? Is a similar dimension. Venni mentioned about the social economic impact or informal economy or new trend for social challenges, social problems.
Yes.
Based on technological innovation. So I think it's very good, interesting point to discuss later. Okay. Hi, Linda.
Hi, Linda.
Long time no see.
Hi, Linda.
Oh, okay. Linda, you could start in 5 minutes later after talking by Professor Sang-Hyuk.
Okay, no problem.
The subject given to me was the RIS policies in Korea. That's why I prepared some suggestions in this regard. About 20 years ago, when I was in a public organization, I participated in planning of Korea's first 5 technoparks. And since then, I have been involved to various policies about RIS. And I will talk based on this experience. Okay. My subject is for a flourishing RIS in Korea. I will give some suggestions. In fact, Korea's local technology innovations has made great progress over the past decade, resulting in a high demand for case studies on Korea's RIS successful stories from overseas. However, I think there are still some limitations, especially in the following points. First, innovation should be supported by a strong social acceptance in each region. For it, technology innovation policy should be linked and integrated within the region's unique economy, industry, culture, and art, etc. And they should be centered on shared value. But in fact, this is still insufficient. In other words, economic, industrial, cultural, and education, arts, and technology innovation are often carried out separately. In Korea, 밥 따로, 국 따로, 반찬 따로. The second, the policies should be elaborated and promoted according to the characteristic of each region. And for this purpose, local government should lead it. But in many cases, they still depend on the policies of central government. This may be due to the fact that, unlike other developed countries, most local RIS programs have been led by the central government since their inception. Third, there is still a long way to go in terms of innovation-oriented atmosphere in the region. In other words, there should be a clear distinction between local-led attitude and regionalism. Some people are often caught in the prejudice of exclusive localism. For example, when there is an important issue that requires to seek out experts from all over the country, they often have a closed mind. This kind of mindset should be avoided. Fourth, social entrepreneurs and change agents should come out within each region. We call it champion. And the central government needs to support those strong driving forces. In the case of France, it is worth noting that Senator Pierre Laffitte, he was a politician, he founded Sophia Antipolis. It's a very famous scientist in the research park in Korea, in the world. And greatly, he contributed to the development of it with a clear-cut vision and the innovative initiative, like Mr. Seol Sung-soo in Korea. And five, there is still a greater difference in competence rather than resources among regions. In particular, in terms of planning and the operation of innovation policies, in some areas it is often frustrating in terms of mindset as well as ability level regarding especially R&D globalization, and industry, academia cooperation, and the commercialization of technology. Considering the conscious aspect, excess dominant dogmatism is a major impediment to innovation. So it goes without saying that they should reboost their competence to effectively prepare for the transition period caused by fourth industrial revolution, as well as COVID-19, as we know. Okay, that's all that I have to say. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much.
Then next time, would you please
Okay.
give me chance to me?
Professor Seol?
Yep.
Okay.
I'd like to say the first thing is the fact about Daejeon City. The second one is the recommendations to the Daejeon City. The first fact about Daejeon City is in Korea, there's a big concentration in startup showing. The Daejeon is the number 5 city, number 5 area in Korea in the creating startups. The first one area, first, second, third area is in Seoul. If we classify the Seoul by 구, that means district, there are 23 districts. Among 23 districts, 3 districts, in there are about 60% startups. Newly established startups of about 60% are located there. Seol, Gangnam, and Songpa. Next area is the Bundang. The fifth area is Daejeon. So Daejeon is not so strong in establishing startup. Second fact is the big companies nurtured in Daejeon area are moving to Seoul area. That's the sad story for the innovation policies of Daejeon. Third fact is Daejeon City says they have many strategic industries to be nurtured, but as a citizen who lived in Daejeon City 34 years, that is me. I can't understand what is the strategic industry of Daejeon City. I have no idea. That means there is no strategic industry in Daejeon. So I'd like to say three recommendations. First recommendation is let us select and concentrate a strategic industry. But the selection and concentration is not by product level. That concentration should be technology or industry level. The second recommendation is we need sharing visions and strategies with the citizens or city parliaments. Without sharing any vision, next regional government will change the strategies. Then also the strategic industry designated by this government will be dispersed. So the third recommendation is the innovation strategy is not just by science, technology, and innovation itself. In Korea, or in Daejeon, many big companies and many able young people move to Seoul area. So we need to cut the moving trend. So we need cultural approach for science and technology and innovation. Not just for scientific or technological effort for innovating our regional policies, but also by the cultural approaches. Yes, that's my speech.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Seol. She mentioned about the three characteristic points in innovation in Daejeon and then three recommendations. Thank you very much. We could discuss a little bit later. So, okay, Linda.
Yeah, good afternoon. This is Linda from Taiwan. Okay, today I would like to talk about Taiwan energy transition under goal of net zero carbon emission. I think there are two hot issues in Taiwan. One is energy transition and the other one is digital transition. So today I would like to talk about energy transition in Taiwan. So the figure is number of national net zero pledges and the share of global CO2 emission covered. And Taiwan accounts for 0.8% of global carbon emission. And there is no net zero emission related policy document yet. And now Taiwan is just in the process of legislative proposal. So Taiwan's is very late for this net zero pledges. And you can see the left side figures is you can show you can see the advanced economy. Advanced economies and they will reach to the The advanced economy will reach net zero in about 2045, and the world will reach net zero in 2050. And Taiwan currently emits 300 million tons of carbon per year, which is not a high percentage of the world. However, Taiwan's population and land are much smaller than other countries, and its per capita carbon emission are 11.1 metric tons. It's much higher than China and then UK and India. Okay. And you can see this figure, the worldwide total energy supplies most come from the coal and the oil. And in the net zero path, most fossil fuels will be replaced by renewable energy and the nuclear energy. The proportion of fossil fuels will drop from 80% in 2020 to 20% in 2050. So here is the issue. Are the net zero global trends and the carbon tax the export crisis for Taiwan's industries? I would say absolute yes, if we do nothing, yes. And there are some facts I would like to show how Taiwan can turn in realistic pressure into driving forces. First, climate change. I think climate change is affecting every aspect of life, from industrial development and manufacture to electricity use, transportation, and even the food. And Taiwan has also faced droughts and the floods in recent years. X. There are two X is very important for the carbon reduce. One is Greenhouse Gas Reduction and Management Act. And the other one is Paris Agreement, reached in UNFCCC, COP21. At present, the EU has made it clear that it will implement carbon tax in 2023 and to achieve the goal of 50% reduction in greenhouse gas emission by 2030 and net zero carbon emission by 2050. Third, carbon border tax. The European Union and the United States are planning to implement a carbon border tax, and global investors are more focused on ESG than ever. The EU is Taiwan's fourth largest export trade market, with an annual trade volume of 50.5 billion euros. Once a carbon tax is proposed, it will have a huge impact on Taiwan's export competitiveness. Fourth, large global brands require a clean industrial chain, industrial supply chain. Yeah, Apple and another big company, they had announced a plan to in 2020 for its manufacturing supply chain and the product life cycle to become carbon neutral by 2030, which would reduce its carbon footprint to zero. As a key player in that supply chain, Taiwan is bound to follow the trend of energy transition and seize this opportunity for green growth. And how big of a challenge will it be for Taiwan to reach net zero emissions? You can see the status of Taiwan's energy. Most of energy in Taiwan are imported. It reached 98%. I think the world's most carbon emission comes from industry. However, Taiwan's largest share of carbon emission is energy power generation, which is as high as 55%. And you can see in Taiwan, most energy consumption comes from the industry sector. It is very high. And the energy consumption of the industry sector show exponential. You can show the exponential growth before 2010, and then show a relative stable state. However, it's very higher than other countries. I think Taiwan's energy consumption mainly comes from industry, just as I said before. The top three industry electricity use are semiconductors, optical materials, and the steel. And here you can say per capita energy consumption is increasing year by year. It's very high, okay, compared to another countries. As I would say the overall goal and the policy in Taiwan. In 2015, Greenhouse Gas Reduction and Management Act, which stated that compared to 2000, annual carbon emission should be reduced by 20% by 2030 and 50% by 2050. And in 2020, the Greenhouse Gas Reduction and Management Act was upgraded to the Climate Change Report Act, but it is in progress. It just in process. And the government stated that it will start implementing a carbon-free mechanism in 2021. Is next year. Okay. So the energy transition policy, there are two points. The government has promoted the energy transition since 2016 by developing carbon-free renewable energy, increasing the supply of low carbon and neutral gas, increasing energy independence, reducing air pollution, and ensure stable power supply. Second, the energy transition can promote the low carbonation of the power system in line with the international 2050 net zero emission trends. And next, I will talk about energy transition in Taiwan, sector by sector. The first sector is energy sector. And there are three action plans will be adopted. One is nuclear phase out. Actually, nuclear energy has been down to the 20% of the electricity, and the renewable capacity expansion plan. In the future, we will expand solar, offshore, and onshore wind, and the biogas and the geothermal. So this renewable energy will be planned, will be increased in the future. And third is coal and the carbon emission. There are three action plans will be adopted. One is development of carbon-free renewable energy, and the second, increase low carbon neutral gas. And third, reduce coal use. Okay. So you can see these figures. I think in the future, Taiwan will gradually reduce the use of coal and the nuclear energy because the nuclear energy is not very safe. Instead, the use of clean renewable energy. You can see here, the gas will bigger than the coal, and the renewable energy bigger than the nuclear. Okay. The second sector is transportation. In 2017, the Taiwanese government pledged to ban the sale of combustion engine motorcycles by 2035 and cars by 2040. However, due to the opposition of the automobile industry, the ban was canceled in 2019. So I think in the short time, diesel engine vehicles will be the very first to be regulated and banned. In the building sector, I think from construction to use, almost every aspect of a building can be handled in the low carbon way. So I think if we do something, the overall carbon reduction of the building can reach at least 30%. Okay, agriculture sector. Agriculture greenhouse gas emission in 2025 will be reduced by 30% compared to the base year 2005. Okay, so one is develop new technology and facilities for energy saving and the carbon reduction. Two, implementation of the agricultural product carbon footprint mechanism will be construct. Okay, and third, strengthen the function of agricultural carbon sink. And then the environment sector. The environment sector will contribute to most of the carbon emission reduction before 2020. It is mainly around the establishment of a circular economy and the waste reduction. And the last sector, I will talk about the non-profit and the private business sector. In 2021, a number of well-known companies have formed a Taiwan Alliance for Net Zero Emission. They promote enterprise to achieve 100% net zero emission in their office space by 2030. The ultimate goal is to achieve 100% net zero emission from office location and the production locations across Taiwan by 2050. And another alliance is 8 technology companies. They jointly formed the Taiwan Climate Alliance. They committed achieve 100% use the renewable energy in the manufacture process by 2050. Second, before 2030, 100% electrification of vehicles owned or leased by corporate members in the fleet. Third, in addition, themselves influence and lease their respective supply chain to achieve carbon neutrality simultaneously and advocate to reduce carbon. So far, and the third alliance is more than 30 companies across Taiwan have joined the RE100. And the company responding to the Green Power Initiative span the textile manufacture, financial, etc. So I think in the future, in response to the requirement of the international green supply chain, zero carbon green electricity needs to be added. And the use of green energy by enterprise to connect with international supply is an important factor of production. So the overall, the government has set up 4 major tasks for energy carbon reduction, process carbon reduction, transportation carbon reduction, and the carbon negative technology. Besides, strengthen the guidance for corporate transformation. I think in 2023, a carbon inventory will be launched. So conclusion, I think so far, Taiwan's performance is still not very good, but net zero carbon emission is the way to go. In the future, in response to the requirement of the international green supply chain, zero carbon green electricity must be added. Yeah. The use of green energy has become the key to the export competition of Taiwanese enterprise. Okay, my report is end.
Okay, thank you very much. It's a carbon net zero policy and trends for many countries are very important issues.
Yes.
In Taiwan. So you mentioned about very important points. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to raise some questions to each person.
Yeah.
To go discussions. First, Professor Venni, are you there?
Yeah,
Venni?
I'm here. Yeah.
Yeah, Venni Krishna.
Yeah.
You mentioned about broad or grand challenging trends or changing situation in global economy and society, including the global value chain. So, and Professor Linda mentioned about the international green supply chain. So
Yeah.
what do you think about green supply chain in terms of your mention about the global value chain or global challenging situation? How to incorporate each other?
I think the whole climate change is another politics. You know, what I was talking about is a different type of the geopolitics which has come about. The contestations between China and the US on the one hand, and the way the kind of the changes which are coming about. But the whole of the climate change is based on a different kind of the politics which are being played out in the climate change regimes, you know, and much of it is now depend on developing the kind of the technologies which are there, you know. So for instance, if Taiwan is importing 80% of the energy, and it is the similar situations for many countries like India, you know, which is importing almost 80% of the oil or something like that. So the investment into the whole technologies is going to be a very, very crucial issue. And this is not being discussed at the international level. There could be a good cooperation in terms of the whole innovation centers, you know, the climate innovation centers, which is the kind of the proposal which was there in the last COP meetings, and nothing has moved on that front. What these climate innovation centers will do is, for instance, if you look into the coal, even in the coming 50 years, coal is going to be one of the major polluters, whether it is in Indonesia, whether it is Australia, India, or China. So you have to invest in the carbon capture and the storage technologies, you know, which is there. And even to create an experimental plant in carbon capture and storage, it will take $750 million, only the experimental plant. So you can imagine that if countries don't come together in terms of the climate innovation centers, there is going to be a little forward in terms of the international cooperation. Individually, some countries might do, you know, it might cut down through the carbon tax, and which will lead to the politics like it is in Australia and some other countries. But in terms of the cooperation, I think international cooperation is very, very essential. There is very little movement is taking place in terms of the whole international cooperation. The first issue is the carbon capture and the storage, you know, which nobody is investing into in terms of collaboration, you know, where you could develop technologies in terms of the whole thing. Secondly, for instance, much of the developing countries, the poor developing countries, again at a very disadvantageous position. Some of the crucial technologies in terms of the solar photovoltaic and the new generation of the photovoltaic, all these are patented technologies, you know, unless and until there is something works out at the global level in terms of the technology commons, you know, you cannot be or giving some kind of this thing, making technologies available to the developing countries, nothing is going to be possible. So there are a lot of different sort of politics which are being played out at the international level in terms of only the individual countries, whatever they are committing in terms of the Paris Agreement, where the movement also there is very, very slow, which is going on. And one of the major problems here is the international cooperation in terms of the whole climate innovation centers.
Okay, thank you very much. You mentioned two kind of very good points. So, okay, I'd like to ask Professor Angelina.
Yes,
right.
I can. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Is it okay?
You mentioned about the international cooperation between regions or cities for Daejeon and your social enterprise startups, something like that. So if you think about startups in relation with carbon net zero, so what do you think about international collaboration between cities or Asian countries for building such kind of carbon net zero startups or social enterprise?
Well, that will be very interesting because it is going to be a social enterprise, and it will have a different, agenda and impact. So for Malaysia, we are also going towards the SDG. So which means that a lot of the countries are also going towards SDG so that we are more sustainable in terms of various manner that is spelled out in the SDG. Yes, Malaysia is going towards social enterprise startups, but not many. We have an agency in Malaysia which is called MAGIC, MAGIC. MAGIC is helping the social enterprise startup in Malaysia. They are helping those which are interested to look into the carbon-free or green basis, but not many in Malaysia. Malaysia has not come to that stage yet. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Can you hear me? Yep.
Yeah, here. Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, Dr. Go.
Yeah, right.
I have another lecture is waiting for me, so I should be offline later.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. No problem. And then, Professor Linda.
Yes, thank you.
I will ask you about the more later by email or messages.
Okay, no problem.
As well as sharing more information.
Okay.
About carbon neutral or technological innovation, etc. Okay.
Okay. Sorry.
Thanks very much for your
I have to
participation.
offline. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, Professor, sir.
I am impressed with the fact that there are so many various policies that your country has promoted and executed by now. And in fact, the energy crisis and the Earth's climate problem is a very, very important subject. And it goes without saying that we should do something in everyday life. But frankly, in fact, we tend to forget it in our everyday life. So it's high time, maybe, that we should ASIP, maybe, deal with this kind of problem more seriously. For example, we can make this subject for our future and major issue of our next conference someday. Okay. Okay. Yeah. It's because this is a problem that the many countries should deal with as many as possible. Okay. That's all I am.
Okay. Thank you very much. We have 10 minutes more. So any comments, Professor, sir? Sorry?
No comment.
Oh, okay. Today's session, okay, Venni, some more?
No, actually, I think there was a lot of talk about innovation, regional innovation, and Jeju city to develop as a kind of as an innovation dynamics. I just wanted to flag in that there's a whole concept of creative cities, you know. Richard Florida has published, I think, more than 2 or 3 papers and 2 books. He talked about the creative cities in US. Why, say, for instance, the West, the Silicon Valley side is more creative than the East, you see. So it's a very interesting work by Richard Florida, who combined the science and technology policy, anthropology, and some of the innovation studies together. He published a book on the creative cities. I think that should be very interesting to people looking into Jeju city, or even some of the Malaysian city what Angelina talked about. And another concept which is coming out is we have seen incubation, we have seen the startups within the universities, the science parks and the technology parks, and These are the things which are there. There's also a kind of a new concept of innovation landscape, a new innovation landscape. For instance, Bangalore is the whole city is a kind of innovation landscape. For instance, Shenzhen city, you will find something like the biomedical and the pharmaceutical is the Melbourne city, which is there. So it is not just the technology which is there, which is also the social and the cultural factors which are very important. For instance, the whole notion of the tolerance, whole notion of how, say, Melbourne, you will find that Rod Laver Arena of tennis is there. The Melbourne Cricket Club is there. So it is not just the kind of the technology which makes city important. It is the most cultural and the social activities within the city. If you develop, it becomes much more attractive in terms of those cities. So it is the innovation landscape concept is also very important. That's what I wanted to flag in.
Thank you very much, Kuyu, for your good information and good points. So we'll look at the papers and books by Richard Florida and then think about many points you mentioned. Okay, we discussed about grand challenges or challenging trends in the global level. Broadly, and also we discussed about the more details about how to build the startups, including social aspects and the carbon net zero. So I think it's good points. We are watching now in the era of post-pandemic pandemic COVID-19. The end of the neoliberal globalization. In the era of globalization, the region and cities are less important, but nowadays the region or cities or regional innovation is getting more important in this kinds of pandemic situation or carbon net zero period. So that's why we try to discuss about regional innovation more, or find out new insights or ideas and innovations. So, okay, so we could discuss or develop more how to find out such kinds of new ideas and innovations based on the technology or technical innovation in the future, including the ASIP conference as well. Okay, thank you very much. We could ask some more later by emails or messages to discuss more, to share information and ideas.
Yeah.
Okay.
See you nice.
Okay, thank you very much.
Angelina.
Thank you.
See you, Professor Seol. See you, Professor